Midway through June, a funny thing happened. The belt action brawler, generally known as beat-em-ups in America, birthed not one but two modern attempts at rejuvenating the genre. One took an evolutionary approach, taking advantage of the gains of 30 years since their heyday, and another took a more retro approach, releasing a title that could find home on an Xbox Series X or a Neo-Geo. Hi, I'm Chad Bonin. Let's open up D-pads and DLC and talk about the newest title from the people behind Xenocrisis. In the grand tradition of Smash TV, Xenocrisis is a modern twin-stick shooter released on decidedly older hardware. Designed for the Neo Geo, Genesis, and Dreamcast, this Kickstarter title brings a bit of hyperviolence and gore. Here are my thoughts on Final Vendetta. In an interview with God is a Geek, design director Mike Tucker explained his North Star for the game.
Final Fight and Streets of Rage 1 and 2 were pretty much the benchmark, as we wanted to create a classic with that 90s look and feel, although with our own refinements and touches. We also felt that Neo Geo needed a great beat-em-up, as the likes of Mutation Nation, Burning Fight, and Tsundoku didn't live up to Capcom or Sega's offerings.
At first glance, it's not hard to see the influences of the titles mentioned. The UI is a dead ringer for Final Fight, the path progression mimicking much of the first game, from the mean streets to a subway in the first two levels alone. Streets of Rage inspiration is tossed in the blender as well, although having grown up with the Super Nintendo port of Final Fight, this feels like that game through the lens of a Neo Geo, as the sprites are large and shaded much like, say, an Art of Fighting game. Coupled with a tutorial that gives flashbacks to a Neo Geo arcade tutorial, and this game is all over the map. When one of the sprite artists for the team references the game Body Blows, a Team 17 game for the Amiga and MS-DOS, in one character's animation, you know this title is making the deep cuts. That's all background stuff. How's the actual gameplay? A throwback to Quarter Munchers, Final Vendetta is unforgiving. The classic genre manages to be pitch perfect here in gameplay from the early 1990s, for good and bad. Starting with a set number of lives, your character has a simple jump, attack, special, and super move at their disposal, along with whatever temporary weapons they may find on the battlefield. Using a super move while your super bar isn't full is a gamble. You may be in need of clearing the area around you, but you'll take a smaller hit to your life bar than if you just sat there and continued to get hit. Special attacks are a bit more powerful than your regular attack and are key to surviving. As of the time of this publication, I haven't been able to get halfway through the game without cheats that unlock unlimited health. Given that the entire game could be beat by a skilled player under an hour, that might give you an idea of how difficult it is. Luckily, upon a second playthrough, it was obvious that some experience with the title would make it a bit easier. Adding in a second player also helps hold the forces of evil at bay. This also grants a vestigial versus mode. While a nice addition, it's impossible to say this mode feels as fully fleshed out as the single player mode. And while it looks like Street Fighter, or more accurately, Fighter's history, the multiplane movement carrying over to this mode makes it a bit unwieldy to actually hit your opponent. It's a bit of a novelty. Also, why is the game telling me to destroy a car? What car are you talking about? It may be because the game has a planned Neo Geo release, but there's a distinct feeling that some aspects of the game are almost what you'd expect from a limited port. The character select screen lacks any sort of animation. There truly is only a handful of villains, just with different levels of difficulty expressed via palette swaps, and stage transitions are artificial. Characters just warp from one location to another with a slight effect. It's not clear how you get from the pathway outside of a mansion to within what looks like an attic. The locale being in the United Kingdom and not a fake American city like Metro City doesn't ever seem obvious, outside of the backgrounds and characters having names such as Clive. The actual art style, including works by the great Genzo Man, really does fit the vibe. The villain designs do scream 1990s brawler as much as Claire's leather jacket and Duke's high top. Villains and heroes alike walk into a frame with smooth animation, and characters like the Poison/Roxy knockoff have neat standby animations while they wait for the screen to clear. Turning on the CRT filter here works wonders. It's not something I always like to do, but it definitely polishes up the graphics, which is weird because it's actually distorting them, but in a good way. Lastly, I have to ask, what's with Miller's walk animation? Right before I settled in to finish his script, the developers provided a whole list of changes coming to the game's Steam iteration first. These changes look to mainly adjust the balance issues, causing the special effects to have a cost, but figuring out some of the more abusive tactics the enemies will take. With a casual mode on the way, it may be a bit easier to recommend, but we'll have to wait and see.